From the Evening Standard in London, I'm David Marsland, and this is The Leader.
No, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion.
For someone who's been getting up at the crack of dawn for 5 years, Piers Morgan didn't get much of a lie-in from his first day no longer as a GMB host. He was outside his own house responding to reporters this morning after leaving the show so dramatically and insisting the decision was his.
So if I have to fall on my sword for expressing an honestly held opinion about Meghan Markle and that diatribe of bilge that she came out with in that interview, so be it.
Your decision to leave ITV, what did you ask?
Yeah. No, it was all very amicable. I had a good chat with ITV and we agreed to disagree.
ITV's backed up that version of events, but it's emerged Meghan did make a complaint about Piers Morgan, claiming she'd lied about suicidal thoughts in that interview with Oprah. The Duchess is reported to have told ITV's CEO that she was concerned about how Morgan's comments may affect the issue of mental health generally and those attempting to deal with their own problems. The Evening Standard's Jonathan Prynn is here. Jonathan, did Meghan's complaint have any influence on Piers falling on his sword, in his words?
I'm sure that's something that the top brass of ITV had to take into account. I mean, she was one of 41,000 people who put in complaints about his comments, sort of focused around him not believing her claims about her mental health and how that was affected by her time as a member of the royal family. So I think when you've got 41,000 complaints, including the person at the centre of all this, plus the fact you had credible charities such as Mind expressing their real concern, and then just to cap it all, a huge and I think to my mind unprecedented bust up with his own colleague on live TV, which resulted in him storming off the set. I think if you put all this together, it did put ITV in a very, very difficult position. Which of those factors was the straw that broke the camel's back? It's difficult to say, but I think Caroline McCall and the other senior executives at ITV were put in a really difficult position where I guess they probably asked him, we don't know this, but they probably asked him to go on air with some sort of public apology or admission of not guilt exactly, but admitting that he spoke wrongly. But he clearly was not prepared to do that, and I guess the parting of the ways was probably inevitable from that point.
No, he's been outside his house today, quoting Winston Churchill and saying it's all a freedom of speech thing. Now, we know that might be popular with places like these new TV channels that are coming up, so I don't think we're going to be seeing the last of Piers Morgan, are we?
No, not at all. I mean, he's a highly bankable, highly talented presenter who, whatever you think of his personal views, he's got real caliber and clout as an interviewer. He's absolutely certain that he will crop up again soon, possibly on one of the new channels that are being put together as we speak. He won't be able to work for long, that's for sure. I think the only question is how much was already in the system when this all came to a head and he lost his job with Good Morning Britain.
So that's one definite impact of this interview that Meghan and Harry gave to Oprah, which now went out in the US on Sunday. So it's been rolling on for a few days now. What's happening with Buckingham Palace itself, though? Is there any impact there? What's kind of the next move for the palace?
I think the next move for the palace, they've done their public thing, which was terse and brief, but sort of covered all the bases, quite cleverly worded, I think. I think that gives them a little bit of wiggle room now to try and build bridges, try and dampen all this down, try and build some sort of new relationship with the Sussexes. I think they're quite right that this can't be done in public. It has to be done in private. Otherwise, it becomes even more of a circus than it is already. And what seems to be emerging is absolutely clear generational divide between maybe sort of somewhere around the 50 mark, or maybe slightly younger. The younger people definitely overwhelmingly sympathise with the Sussexes, and older people overwhelmingly sympathise with the Queen and the royal establishment. And that's fine in the short term, but in the long run, that has to be an enormous worry, I would have thought, for people who are supporters of the institution of monarchy and the crown, because these are obviously the future voters. And we've now seen twice in a generation young women brought into the family who have left in really, really difficult circumstances that do not reflect well on the royal family. And I think that has to be addressed, and that has to be addressed behind scenes. And I think they have to get Harry and Meghan back on board in some form, because otherwise the collateral damage from this is really very, very profound, I think.
Well, you can see that in comments made by people like Malcolm Turnbull, who's the former Prime Minister for Australia, who says it's another reason for the country to sever its constitutional ties to the British monarchy. I mean, when we're talking about high stakes, we're talking very high stakes here, aren't we?
We're talking about very, very high stakes. I mean, the monarchy and the crown has been at the centre of the British system of governance in various forms for 1,000 years. It's quite hard to imagine how the system would work without it. And I think that's sort of almost been one of the reasons why the monarchy has endured. It's just almost too much bother to recast our constitution, our system of government in a post-monarchical world. But I do think those sorts of questions will be asked more frequently, particularly by younger people, unless these sorts of problems can be sorted out. And I mean, it does seem very, very sad and very, very damaging that Harry and Meghan, whatever their faults, and lots of people think they are spoilt and entitled and all the rest of it, but whatever their faults, there's no doubt they had enormous pulling power for the younger generation in terms of recasting the monarchy brand for the next generation. There was huge potential there, and that now looks like it's been thrown away in the most spectacular and self-harming way. And so I think, and I'm sure, the crown, the royal family and Buckingham Palace are well aware of this, and they will want to create some sort of reconciliation with Harry and Meghan just to take some of the poison out of this situation. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's undoubted that they were the biggest stars that the royal family had until they left. And I'm wondering what Harry and Meghan themselves are doing right now, because as soon as that interview aired, they've vanished. We haven't heard from them at all. I wonder how they're feeling about what's going on. I wonder what they're going to do next.
Well, they had sort of briefed that this would be their full and final say on the situation, but I don't think it's that easy for them just to sort of come out with this absolute barrage of complaints and accusations and allegations and then expect to be able to never be asked about it or never speak about it again. I think that's impossible. I mean, they obviously have lots of commercial commitments now that they will need to fulfill, but they've made it very clear that they intend to carry on a life of service, public service, just outside the confines of the royal family structure. And that will involve them having ongoing contact with the media, if nothing else, to publicize the work they're doing. So that I think they will carry on being asked questions about the things that they claimed for the absolute foreseeable future. I think that's the rod they've created for their own back. You cannot turn on and switch off in that nice, convenient way that they had hoped for.
And that's The Leader. There's more from Jonathan at standard.co.uk, and you can also read Michael Howie's piece on reaction across the Commonwealth as this story reverberates around the world. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.